to the Paranormal Pendle podcast, coming to you from the heart of Pendle Witch Country in the northwest of England. My name is Craig Bryant, author, investigator and collector of stories. Join me as we take a journey into the paranormal, UFO sightings, cryptozoology and big cats. This is the Paranormal Pendle podcast. Welcome to episode 34 of Paranormal Pendle, broadcasting to the Paranormal UK radio network at paukradio.com. So I'm delighted. This episode we're going to talk about something new, something that we've never discussed on the podcast before. My guest is Stuart Allen, or Stu as he likes to be called, as I will be calling him throughout the interview. Stu has an interest and has done some research into ancient aliens, fallen angels and Bigfoot, so quite an eclectic mix of subjects, and again, as I said, subjects that we haven't discussed in the past on the podcast, so I'm really looking forward to this. So Stu, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Craig. I'm glad to be here. Basically I've had a keen interest on looking at the Nephilim, realistically, what started me in this area, and then connecting it to the ancient alien theorist group, if you will, or religion, as the kind of proposing. I'm not, as you would say, a religious person, but the links to creationism, I think, are fascinating. And as fast as science is going to prove that evolution, they're also tying everything to creationism with DNA strings and really realistically being able to create life from just the fact that you can have the DNA string and you can create something from it. Dolly the sheep, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just sort of move towards the ancient aliens subject to begin with.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously, it's sort of quite a big subject, isn't it, really?
Oh, yeah, it's vast. I think, realistically, if you look at a lot of the ancient buildings around the world, there is carvings that suggest that the people of Earth were visited by ancient aliens. I would just say it's confusing to think that they either had something that they could look into the future, a crystal ball, and say that there are spacemen, people have been in space, or they were actually visited. There's paintings all over mountains in North America that the Native Americans have put on. If you look at Angkor Wat, there's carvings in the temples there. Certainly in the pyramids, in the hieroglyphics, there's carvings that suggest that we've been visited in the past by beings from outer space. Tying that together with the fallen angel theory, that we have been created by an alien race.
So what are your theories then on pyramids, for instance? Because obviously, there are different types of pyramids being built all across the world. So the two obviously that are the most talked about, obviously the Egyptian pyramids and the Aztec pyramids. You mentioned, again, I mean, this is a massive subject, and I'm trying not to go off tangent with it, really.
No.
You mentioned about hieroglyphics. So obviously there have been hieroglyphics and carvings that have been found at these sites that would suggest, and some of them have been very similar in design, that would suggest some sort of extraterrestrial involvement. So what's your thoughts on that?
The pyramids, I think there's a few theories on the pyramids. Either the races of man were trying to get closer to the heavens, so they built a structure. Being from the building trade, the pyramid probably would be the easiest way to get the height at the time, building it up into a triangle. There are other people that say that the pyramids were actually built as the tombs for the leaders. Personally, it's the one thing that really, if you look globally, is the building that unites most races is a pyramid. They're not just found in, like you say, in South America or in Egypt. It's a global phenomena. Recently in Eastern Europe, there's been discoveries of pyramids. In China, there's a giant pyramid being found over there. So there is some significance into that building, that type of building. Were humans mimicking landing craft, like in the film Stargate, where it shows the pyramid being a spacecraft? That's quite an interesting idea that was put onto film, but in hindsight, let's go to the Giza pyramids, for instance, and the mimicking of the Orion star system, which is quite fascinating as well. So if you look at the Orion's belt and the layout of the whole of the Giza complex, it actually mimics exactly that star constellation. Are they guides? Were they put on as for aerial identification, so that anybody visiting would know where to land?
Yeah, sort of like like markers. I mean, again, you've got these huge sort of I don't know, would you call them carvings that you can only see from altitude in places like South America. And the sort of human or humanoid shaped, but they're absolutely huge, aren't they? I mean, why would you do something like that if you were purely looking at it just from ground level? You would do something smaller that you could actually stand there and look at and see the whole thing, rather than having to sort of ascend to maybe 500 feet, 1,000 feet, or whatever. And obviously, at that particular time in history, we didn't have flight, or we don't think we had flight. So the question is then, why would these sort of carvings on the ground be made so big?
Yeah, looking at like the NASCAR lines you talk about, but there are other carvings in mountains in the mountains of Peru and down the Andes, in particular, that purport to that. Also, there is a temple in Peru, and they found stones that couldn't possibly have been cut by modern tools. They look like they've been made by a laser, if you will, something from that would be that precise. The tools that were available to man at the time of carving could never ever have produced such intricate work. So things tie together that we were visited at one time by an alien race. Are we still being visited? That's another question for probably another show. But we could also bring into this interdimensional travel as well. There are stories of stargates, or I'll go back to Stargate again. It's not that it's my base or my theories of Stargate. It's just been called a Stargate, where it was supposed to be in a mountain in Peru, where it's actually called the Gate to the Stars, where you could go through the mountain and into another universe, like a wormhole. I think is a modern type of theory on this. To really combat what, if we're going to try and tie things together, everything can be, if you will, poo-pooed by science, saying, well, you won't be able to travel across space. But now we're looking at wormholes and other bits and things like that could actually solve that argument, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that fascinates me, you're talking about these stones that have been found and they've been cut to such a minute degree. They've been cut so so smoothly, and you know, we would even find it difficult with modern tools to be able to replicate it. One thing that I find fascinating about, and I'm going back to the pyramids again, because certainly the Egyptian pyramids and Egyptology and the whole thing around the belief system that they had, I think is really interesting. And some of the large stones that they've looked at have been cut by, you know, to such the nth degree, really. You know, something that we would struggle to do today, even with modern technology. So, you know, the question is, did the ancient Egyptians have technology which has now been lost, and which wasn't recorded? Now, given the fact that they tended, or they seem to record everything, really, you know, certainly with regards to their pharaohs and their gods and their belief systems, they tended to record everything within the pyramids. So you'd think that if there was some sort of lost technology, it would have been recorded, you know, showing them cutting these stones or whatever. But it isn't. So that would, to me, would suggest then that something else has been going on there. I don't know, you know, what's your thoughts on that then? I mean, how did they build the pyramids? Because we've tried to replicate it with modern construction technology, and obviously it's very, very difficult.
There are a few theories. I think one that I particularly like. I would not say that it's true, but the one that I do like is the fact that they could use vibration, different frequencies to move objects and to create objects. As you know, human beings, we resonate at a certain frequency. That fortunately our vision, our eyes, are tuned into, so that nobody looks blurred all the time. But everything has a frequency, and one theory is that they could harness this frequency to move blocks and create blocks and move them around, so that they could make the pyramids out of it. It does sound a bit far-fetched, but is that a technology that's been lost?
Exactly. Yeah.
But what recently they've discovered a chamber under the Sphinx that they believe to be a vast library of lost work, if you will, and history of the Egyptian race that goes back further. Now, we all know not say we all know this, that's an assumption. The Sphinx is a lot older than the pyramids by at least 10,000 years. So some say that maybe this library is the lost library of the city of Atlantis. Again, another tenuous link, but they were supposed to be excavating, and then there was a civil war in Egypt not long ago, and it stopped all excavations, and I've not really caught up with anything from that since. Nothing's been released that they've said anything. Going back to ancient technologies and the pyramids, another theory was that the pyramids were actually generators of electricity, and the ancient Egyptians actually harnessed electricity through the pyramids.
Okay.
And the lodestones at the top.
Yeah, we could probably do with that sort of technology today, with the way that.
Well, yeah, you would think, wouldn't you? Yeah, if it is feasible, if it is physically possible in physics, then yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because it would obviously be a fairly clean technology, I would have thought.
But you also look at the ley lines. If you look around so if you will, the ancient druids and wise people, if you will, of each race, knew where the energy lines ran through the world, if you will, and most of the ancient structures are built on these 8 ley lines. Stonehenge.
I was going to say Stonehenge. Yeah, Stonehenge is a good example of that, isn't it? And Newgrange, I believe, in Ireland is also built on a ley line. I mean, what's your thoughts on Stonehenge? I mean, what do you think it was built for? And again, sorry to interrupt, but again, we're talking about massive stones, aren't we? And I mean, some of the stones were brought, dozens and dozens of miles, weren't they?
Yeah, from Wales apparently. They've traced back the stone, haven't they? Well, I have a theory, but my theory is really, really left centre.
Okay, well, go on.
well, if I go back to what we call the Nephilim, we purported that there was giants roaming the world. And if you look in the Bible, when Moses left Egypt and went to find the Holy Land, he sent his 12 spies out to look at Canaan, and they came back with reports that the land was filled with giants.
Okay, right.
And if there's a place in Canaan where they found massive stones that have been carved ready for building construction, that are over 100 tons in size, and the carving is absolutely magnificent. And there's no way at that time no man of normal proportions would be able to lift it and move it. And it kind of links to that. But if you look at Stonehenge, maybe it was built by a giant race of taller, stronger people. If we were going to go by that, a more logical theory would be water would be a good way of lifting heavy blocks in that time. If you flooded an area, if you dammed it off and flooded it, you could lift anything to a certain height and move it onto the henge itself. But probably a temple, I would have thought, that more than anything. It seems to line up with the solstices, doesn't it? So it has an important if you will, function within the ancient races.
No, that's interesting. So, because some people think it could be an astronomical clock, don't they? Or
there's another one that was about that said that they would be used for flying saucers to land on.
I've not heard that one actually, but yeah.
No. If you there's going a bit off at a tangent again. The Germans built a flying disc towards the end of the Second World War, and it's in Norway. There is a circular structure that they built for it to land on and take off from, and since then people have made a link to stone circles as being places for flying saucers to land on. I think it's a bit far-fetched myself. I think it'd be more to do with like you say, an astronomical clock or with the solstice, so they could tell the times of year were coming. So winter's coming, summer's coming, spring's coming. So it's time to harvest or be ready for the harsher weathers.
Yeah. But again, that doesn't really explain how they actually built the thing.
No.
Because again, you're talking about some of the stone blocks are like 100 tons, aren't they? Some of them.
Oh yeah. It's a phenomenal amount of weight, and you can say, oh yeah, they can lift it with a block and tackle, but do you think of the strength of the block and tackle to lift it with, even on a pulley system? But I mean, the pulleys will help reduce the load, but it's having that technology to make the pulleys.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been a hell of an undertaking to move, because some of the quarried stones at Stonehenge, as you mentioned, they've been traced back to being quarried in Wales, and you're talking, sort of 50, 60, 70 miles away.
Yeah, even floating across the sea, it's still a long way, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, it is, and it does make you wonder how they actually. Well, I mean, the manpower involved to move them must have been phenomenal, and again, I mean, going back to the pyramids and so on, there's obviously that belief system there as to why these structures were built. There's obviously a very strong belief system and very strong motivation in order to get obviously there must have been an awful lot of people involved in these constructions,
Well,
you know, and organising them and you know, keeping them, because I mean they took dozens of years, didn't they, to build?
oh yeah, it's like, I suppose, like our cathedrals in a way. That took decades and decades, generations to build them. But I mean, it's always been said that the Egyptians had a massive slave race anyway, because of who they were and how powerful they were, more advanced at the time. But still, it is an immense project to undertake to get these things in place. I think as well, when we're told or were taught in schools at a young age that pyramids were tombs, and the pharaohs were buried in them. But then we found that that a lot of the pharaohs were in the Valley of the Kings, hidden away in hidden tombs. But
yeah,
I suppose we also know that a lot of the tombs were raided. So if you're going to have a big pyramid to be buried in with all your gold, it's kind of an advertisement for any grave robbers to say, oh, well, that's where it's buried. Let's go and get it, you know.
Yeah, and I believe that the pyramids originally, when they were built, were actually smooth-sided with
Yes.
Was it alabaster or something similar to that? And you know, they would shine in the sun. You know, and it's just all been stripped off over the millennia. You know,
the. I think the last the I can't think where I've just remembered. I've just forgotten what it is, but they were originally there were step pyramids like the pyramids in South America, like say the Aztecs.
Yeah.
But then they advanced to the smooth-sided ones, like you say, and there's supposed to be lots of lost cities in the deserts in and around Egypt that hide other technologies that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there was the film The Mummy, wasn't there? The remake, where they were looking for the City of the Dead. I mean, you know, often, films sometimes have got a little bit of truth in there. You know, these ideas have got to come from a spark from somewhere.
Yeah, they will take a bit of history and embellish it and grow that idea. But yeah. I mean, people are looking for all sorts of bits and pieces to tie why the pyramids were built. I mean, we still probably go back to the tombs, but I was going to say, in the giant pyramid at Giza, they found a hidden chamber. Again, this is going back to the time, going back a few bits and a few years before COVID, and they think they found a link of why the pyramid was built. But again, all work was stopped due to the war that broke out, and we haven't really got any further with that yet.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, no, it's a massive subject, obviously, and the whole ancient aliens and pyramids. I mean, you know, there are documentaries galore, aren't there, on cable and satellite and Amazon and Netflix and so on. And you know, there are some people who would seem to make quite a good living out of the subject. So
I think like I say, the good thing about documentaries, it does open doors to people having theories and ideas, but I think they also bring on a lot of hoaxes as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think obviously you go into the paranormal and you're looking at spirits and ghosts and there are, you know, for every genuine story there are probably 99 or more hoaxes that have come out that actually destroy that field of thought. You know.
Absolutely. I mean, I mean, that's a discussion that I've had with guests in the past, both in relation to the paranormal field and UFOs as well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there are some people again in both of those fields, I think, who seem to make a very good living out of certain theories, shall we say, and often I think sometimes you've got to look beyond what they're telling you, because sometimes these people are not what they seem to be. But yeah, I mean, it's it is a really interesting subject, and I think it's I think there are still an awful lot of secrets that these places are yet to give up, and obviously there's always going to be those questions, I think, about how they were built and who built them and so on. Can we sort of have a bit of a just sort of move on and have a bit of a chat about your theories on creationism then? And you what I like to do for the listeners is contact my guests by email and just say, what do you want to talk about, sort of thing, before we do this. Your email was it was only a couple of lines long, but it really got me, because you talk about fallen angels, creationism, and the Nephilim. So I'm going to throw it over to you. Tell me about those subjects.
Okay, right. So if we're going back to the Bible, if we look at the Bible, as soon as you mention the Bible, people switch off and they stop listening to you. But in the Bible, there are little paragraphs, little lines, bits of stories here and there that relate to an ancient history. So in Genesis, it talks about the Nephilim. Now, for those people who don't know what the Nephilim are, God, who's supposedly the creator of mankind, had his team of angels, and the angels were flying down to earth and procreating with the daughters of man. So in the Bible it says the sons of God, which were the angels, and the daughters of man procreated, and the offspring were the Nephilim. Okay. And these were the heroes of old. So if you relate that to the ancient Greek legends of the Greek gods that were about at the time, you could possibly relate those heroes to be Nephilim. Also, giants. There were giants, men of extraordinary strength, speed, fighting ability. So God then told, because he was angry at these angels, he banished them to earth. Now, what do we take from that? Is there an essence of truth in it? Is it just a legend? What we do know in the Bible, it does mention giants quite a lot. It also tells us that the flood occurred, the flood of Noah in Noah's time, because God wanted to rid the world of all the Nephilim, all the bad blood that was floating around in human beings, and Noah's was the only pure line that was left, and therefore Noah was picked and his family was picked to survive, and the flood was supposed to wipe the earth of all the Nephilim and all the bad blood and start again. Some people say the flood was localized, some people say it was worldwide. It's down to your own interpretation. I'm not trying to preach anything of the Bible here. I'm just talking about what connections I've made. So if you will say that God created man, from in his own image, from basically it says from the earth. But if we think about it now, as science has advanced to a stage where we can create life from DNA, who's to say that an ancient race of aliens, maybe, who are humanoid in outlook, in shape, did not create human beings from DNA, from their DNA, and maybe something from this planet's DNA, so we can then link that to apes or Neanderthal man or something like that. If they mix those DNAs together to create a human being, that is feasible. So creationism, yes, we've created, but in a different way. That we look at God as we tend to look at God as this big guy with a beard and a white outfit, and he's sat on a cloud with a harp and he's doing that. But we also look to the heavens for that creation.
So you think the possibility then that when you look at all religions, and obviously, you know, Christianity, for instance, has its roots sort of 2,000 years ago. The Greek gods and the Greek belief system obviously goes back thousands of years before that. The Romans obviously took quite a lot from the Greeks. In fact, the Romans actually borrowed most of the Greek gods, I think, and just gave them different names. But then, if we go wider, we go back to the ancient Egyptian gods. You go back to sort of, I mean, you can talk about any religion, Buddhism, Islam. They've all got the same sort of idea, then, haven't they, of these super gods, creatures, humans who created the earth. So, do you think that it's possible that these belief systems were actually created because they didn't understand extraterrestrials who were possibly visiting us at the time, and the only way that they could rationalize what they were encountering, or indeed perhaps they were taught by these beings that, you know, they were actually, you know, superior to them, and therefore they were their gods? I mean, it's interesting when you look at, say, for instance, Greek mythology, where you've got all the different gods that represent all the different things. I mean, there's, you know, it's entirely possible that there could have been extraterrestrials who visited that part of the earth at the time, because it was quite an advanced civilization anyway.
I think there's some validity in what you're saying. If you look at the all the advanced ancient races, the ones that we look at and say, what we're talking about the Aztecs, the Egyptians, the Greeks. If we believe that Atlantis actually was a city, it was supposed to be a very advanced city of the time. Then we look into the ancient Hindu religion. There's multiple gods before Christianity and the Hebrew religion came in and said, "Oh no, we're not worshipping multiple gods. We're worshipping one God, that He's the creator." So it would link up to the fallen angel theory that in different parts of the world we had groups of these fallen angels who were superior because they had extra powers, if you will, or they were stronger, they lived longer, etc. And they tended to live on mountains, didn't they? High up. So obviously Mount Olympus. Was Mount Olympus a spacecraft or something that they descended from? If we look at all these people descending, even the angels that God sent his angels, they all had a halo. Is that halo a space helmet? Do you know? Does that link together? So,
I mean, when you mention the word fallen angel, I think, as somebody who's not particularly religious, but somebody who was brought up as a child to be, well, Church of England, Christian, however you want to mention it. I mean, the words fallen angel are usually associated in the Bible with the devil.
Yes. Well, the devil, or Satan, was the head of that group of people, that angels that were banished from heaven. He was God's favourite son, if you will.
Yeah.
Next to Michael, but they were sent to earth and they were banished, and eventually Satan was banished, and so we come from that. Hell was created, and that's Satan's prison, if you will. But the story of God telling his if you will, his angels. I mean, we call them angels. We call them angels because that's what people understand them. I don't know what to say, but they were these people that worked with him, and then he said, "Don't mate with those women because it's not right. They can't cope. The planet cannot cope with our DNA. You should know this." I think also if you look at the races of man as well, if you look around the planet, there are quite a diverse features. And is that deliberate? Can you say it's evolution? I don't know. It's just a question that you've to ask yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
sometimes.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the thoughts, obviously, about religion from a non-religious person such as myself is that religion was created, or all religions were created as a tool of control over the masses, basically to keep everybody in line. So, you know, if you believe in the Bible and you believe in Christianity, if you live a good life and you behave yourself and you attend church, and you give money to the church, because let's face it, you know, the church in this country was a particularly powerful organisation. It still is now, but it was more powerful up until obviously Henry VIII, you know, dissolved all the monasteries and basically stole the wealth. But they were, you know, the biggest landowners in the country for hundreds of years, and it was just a way of controlling people and basically making sure that they behave themselves. Otherwise, you know, they believe that they will go to hell instead of heaven.
I think it has been used to control, but maybe it starts out as something different. If you look at a church in general, a going church, there's a lot of chanting, a lot of praying, and again, I'll go back to the vibration, the resonance. Maybe that has a healing power, and maybe that was what they were intended for. It started out as a mass of people gathering together, chanting and saying certain prayers in a certain way that it sent out healing vibrations to the people who attended, so they were healthier.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And if that was how it started, it certainly has been manipulated in modern times to exactly what you were saying about control. You know, you'll get your rewards in heaven if you work like an idiot for me for no money, but you'll get your. I'll sit here in a posh house with lots of food while you struggle. Well, we could talk about that forever. But I think what it started out as and what it turned into are two different things. But I would say that every structure. If you will, every structure that's been built on religious bounds are very fantastic acoustically. You know, if you look at all the cathedrals, you say, oh, great acoustics. It's got to be there for a reason, hasn't it?
Yeah, harmonics and you know, sort of brown noise. You know, these frequencies that are so low that we can't hear them. Obviously, do have an effect on. Certainly have an effect on certain people, don't they? And you know, the harmonics and everything and so on. It's quite an interesting angle to think about, actually.
You know, if we get because if you look, I've been brought up a Catholic, and the mass is the same week in, week out. You know, and it's the same mantra. But is it the harmonics within that mantra that was developed for health, well-being? You know, it's just I think it's just another, if you will, music. We all like a different type of music, but the resonance of that music makes us happy.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a very interesting point. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so maybe the hymns and the singing and the chanting and everything else was.
I will go more chanting, because I think hymns are a latter day addition to it. You know?
Yeah.
I would certainly go back to the prayers and the chanting. You know, the hundreds of people chanting in a chamber.
Yeah, like Psalms, for instance. They're more a sort of chant, aren't they? In the Christian and Catholic religions, so they're more sort of chanting, aren't they, rather than singing? You know, the sort of they're almost like singing but without the music, aren't they?
Yeah.
So that is there's some really interesting points there, actually, really interesting thought-provoking points. I mean, I certainly find the Bible fascinating. As I say, I'm not personally, I'm not religious, but I do find the way that we can interpret the Bible as being very interesting, and I think obviously a lot of it, in my opinion, was a way of explaining the world around us through a lack of understanding, through lack of scientific understanding. But I mean, obviously, there's two sides of either the creationist theory or evolution. And obviously, at the time when the Bible was written, sort of, a few hundred years. Well, obviously, the Old Testament was written well before the New Testament.
Yeah.
But the New Testament was written a few hundred years after.
And
the death of Jesus.
Yeah, and it's been written to suit people, to suit the people who were in power at the time as well.
Yeah,
so there's bits left out and bits misinterpreted. So we've only got a version of.
Entire chapters are missing as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, what I've been talking about today, the Book of Enoch, which isn't in the Bible, but the Book of Enoch talks a lot about the Nephilim, the fallen angels, the Watchers, the people who look after the planet. It talks quite a lot about it, but that is missing from the Bible because I think it was a subject that was deemed a bit too controversial for people at the time.
Yeah, it was something that the people who were in power, as it were, didn't want people to know about.
No, and if you're looking at it being a tool of control, and let's face it, not many people could read up until about 200 years ago. Certainly wasn't the proxy of the working classes.
Yeah.
That anything that Bibles read was only read by, if you will, the classes that could read, so they could spread the word how they wanted to.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. What about Bigfoot? Let's change the subject again.
We're going on to Bigfoot.
All right. Let's go off on a tangent. Let's talk about Bigfoot, because you mentioned about giant skeletons that have been discovered in America and possible links to Bigfoot.
Well, it's a recent thing that I've been looking into, really. There's all over North America. There have been tombs uncovered that have giant bodies in them. When I say giant bodies, 7 foot to 9 foot, if you will, skeletons. We've always said there's never been any evidence that Bigfoot it has been around. Nobody ever found a body. I'm not saying that these are Bigfoot bodies, but there was a race of people in America that were extraordinarily tall, and this happened before 1600s when we landed and we populated North America with the Native Americans.
Yeah. Do you think these were an offshoot then, a natural evolutionary offshoot, or do you think there was something else?
Well, it's very possible that they were humanoid and they were just like we would describe a human being. Not hairy like Bigfoot would be. You've seen the Willow Creek video that shows the Bigfoot walking across the creek. So we don't. I'm not saying that this race was Bigfoot, but what I'm trying to say is that there is recorded history that there were large people living in America.
Yeah.
Now, would it be a far stretch of imagination to say that if these people were hunted to extinction, which it seems they have been, would they not go and hide in the forests and the woods in America? I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to any parts of America. I've certainly been to the Appalachians, and there's miles and miles and miles and miles.
Yeah,
just miles of forest land.
Just thousands of square miles, isn't it?
Yeah, and you think, wow,
anything could be hiding in
anything could be in there, and anything that had good bushcraft, could hide from humans. But slipping onto the more modern thoughts on Bigfoot, it's a bipedal ape.
Well, you mentioned before, actually, Stu, if you don't mind me again interrupting.
Yeah.
There's an interesting sentence that you came out with there about we've never found a dead one.
No. This is the thing. Nobody's ever found any remains of a Bigfoot, and this is why science will say that it doesn't exist. You can't have one without the other. This is very true.
Could they be interdimensional beings, do you think?
This has been said, and I'll go back to what I was talking about before about as having different frequencies that we're vibrating. Has a being developed on this planet that can use that frequency to camouflage itself? I mean, how many sightings have you said, well, that was stood right in front of me and then all of a sudden it disappeared? There's lots and lots and lots of stories that of sightings that will say that, it had just gone. I could hear something, but I couldn't see it.
You couldn't see it, yeah. I mean, there's reports, isn't there, of similar things all across the world. I mean, in Australia, they call the Yowie, and there have been sightings in Britain. And again, the interesting thing about Britain is people think that we're a very populated island, but in fact, our population centres are quite well populated, and it's something like about 96% of the landmass is actually not populated.
I think the big problem with that, I thought in Scottish Highlands and maybe in the remoter parts of Wales, there is a possibility, but I would have thought that we'd have hunted it to extinction many years ago if it was sighted in this country, because we seem to have got rid of all our predators, bears, wolves, and anything that was that was against the norm. But I know certainly Russia, you're looking in the Siberia, Tunguska areas, and then we have the relation to the Yeti in the Himalayas, even down to Singapore and the Philippines, where they have a wild creature. It's not supposedly as tall as Bigfoot. It's supposed to be quite small, a 3 foot, 4 foot bipedal ape-like man that wanders around. So there are, I think, like we say again, I think for every truthful sighting of Bigfoot, you would say there's probably 1,000, 2,000 that aren't.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, those that aren't sort of muddy the waters. If we go back to the Native American history, there's all sorts of stories about a wild man in the woods that was ape-like that actually stole the children. Pretty much the origins of the bogeyman story, where the children will be, if they went alone in the woods, they would be taken by the ape-like creatures and eaten. They were kind of very cannibalistic. So I think that there's something's existed there for many, many years. And if we think that America, like we were saying about England being very sparse, although it seems to be populated, it is in certain areas. It's the same in America. There are very big conurbations, of human habitation, but there are vast areas of none. And there are places right from North America right through to Alaska that human beings have not even stepped on.
That's very true. Yeah, that's very true. There are huge areas, aren't there, which are fairly inaccessible. Again, you mentioned other countries as well. Russia obviously has got large areas, certainly. Above the Arctic Circle that very few people go to. Australia, obviously, with the outback. I haven't been to America, but I have been to Australia, and I can vouch for the fact that Australia is rather a large country. You can drive for 7 hours and not see another human being. So
I can imagine. So it's feasible, isn't it? That
absolutely, absolutely
could exist. That you will. And if there's another comparison actually in the two countries, Australia and North America. and I'm including Canada in North America, not just talking about that the indigenous population, both spiritually and physically, believe in these creatures. It's a big part of their spiritual initiations and part of the tribal knowledge, that these things exist.
Yeah.
So that fascinates me. I think that fascinates me more than anything. That they're quite passionate about it in that sense.
Yeah, it's almost a sort of religion, isn't it? Going back to religion. It's almost it's a religious belief, isn't it? That that they are tied in to the creatures around them and the land around them. It's almost like the sort of old religions that we had in this country, going back thousands of years, and even only a few hundred years, where you had people who were accused of being witches and being involved in witchcraft, who were nothing more really than just what we would now call, wise women or wise men who knew about nature and how nature affects us and how to heal people using natural remedies and so on. So that those belief systems are being tied into the land and the seasons and everything else. I think are quite interesting because they are universal, they are worldwide, and I think they go back through many thousands of years of history as well.
Yeah, and it is interesting that any race that hasn't been influenced by Christianity or other religions that have kept their old beliefs still have these people who what they call healers and
like
doctors, because they not like I say they've got herb lore, they understand the land, and these are the people really we need to learn from.
Absolutely.
I like I say, coming back to the Bigfoot. There was a law passed in America that banned banned people from hunting them. And this law was passed in the 80s. So some people say, "Oh, that's an acknowledgement that Bigfoot's real." Yes, it could be. It could also be something that's saying, "Look, if these things do exist, why would you want to go and shoot them just for money? Fame. I've shot something and I've got, we
get into the realms of big game hunting there, though.
Yeah. So it could become a sport, couldn't it?
Yeah. Some people's idea of sport is quite different to my idea of what I think is sport, but that's interesting, that because it is it then an acknowledgement by the authorities that actually there is something out there, and you really shouldn't be pointing a gun at it.
But I think the other one is like I sort of said before about the ancient Indians and the bogeyman, and people saying about the creature being dangerous. I think Bigfoot is potentially a very, very dangerous animal. If you think a creature that can be 6 foot to 9 foot with immense strength and power, that is a carnivorous animal. Like a human, it eats meat, it eats vegetable, it eats vegetables type thing.
Omnivorous.
It could. It potentially be if it attacked a human being, it's not going to it's not going to be a fair fight, is it?
No. No.
So when people have said they've had rocks thrown at them, they've been kind of chased out of areas by a creature, this could be true, but we've not had any reports of physical attacks. But I suppose if they do physically attack, there's nobody there to report it at the end of it. People go missing in the forest all the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they don't. I mean, that could be an explanation for any number of missing people over the years, because I mean, especially in America, the people go missing all the time, don't they? And,
Yeah.
I mean, they go missing in every country in the world, but that could certainly be an explanation.
And everybody will put it down. Maybe it's a bear attack, and maybe a wild animal, because they have mountain lions, don't they, in America? That are quite big and could take a person down quite easily. I think what I'm trying to allude to is that they're not a cuddly creature.
No, absolutely not.
They're not something that we think we could befriend. They're a wild animal that is probably a bit more intelligent than most wild animals, and would probably stay out of human contact as much as possible.
I mean, it's interesting that some of the reports I've read where people have said that they've had encounters with what they call a Bigfoot. The first thing that really they notice before they actually see the creature is the smell.
Yes, that's what you're going on to. But again, if you're a carnivorous animal and you're killing deer or whatever you're killing to eat, all that blood's going into that fur, the fur of the bodies, then that's going to be rancid after a while, isn't it? It's going to absolutely stink. Yeah,
it's not going to be a nice smell, is it?
No, so that is what has been said quite a lot, that the smell is quite bad. So I mean, they might not have very good hygiene regimes, but.
They probably don't shave on a regular basis.
No, and get the L'Oreal out because they're worth it and all that sort of stuff. But I think that the television programs that are on the the expeditions where they go out to find it, in a way, they're great to deter people from not going looking for a Bigfoot, in the fact that they're so rubbish. In their explanations of everything, that they talk about, and I think if you want to protect a species, because you won't want it to become extinct, even if it from the existence of it, that these programs really promote that. I do like watching them, and I like the theories, and I think
Yeah, I mean, they are, again, very much for entertainment purposes. And you can sort of slap that label on a lot of these TV programs, as I mentioned before, paranormal, UFOs, any sort of, hunting Hitler and all this sort of thing. It's all very much for entertainment purposes. And they all tend to be very light on evidence. Extremely light on evidence and more sort of entertainment. So I think the whole Bigfoot phenomena and it's exactly the same with other cryptids, big cats and that sort of thing. I think they can fall into that sort of very similar umbrella of entertainment programs rather than
it's like what they call
programs.
Yeah, it's what they call clickbait, don't they? On a thing, that's what they all are. They're just something to catch your attention, and they have to have something dramatic happen. But the one that makes me laugh the most, I'll just have to say this, Craig, is when they do the tree knocks and they're hitting the tree with a piece of hickory, which is usually a baseball bat, and it has a nice resonance sound coming from it, like a thud, really good sound, and then they have a reply that sounds exactly the same as a baseball bat hitting a tree, not a branch hitting a tree.
Yeah.
Because if you've hit a tree with a branch of a tree, it doesn't really make that much of a noise. It doesn't certainly carry that far.
No.
And that's what one of the things that makes me smile when they do. Oh, we've got a response. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's somebody around the other side of the tree with
somebody like about 200 yards away.
It's a great subject. It really is, and we've covered quite a lot of ground on this podcast. And as I said, there's been subjects that we've chatted about there that we've certainly never broached these subjects before on the podcast, so it's been great to be able to do that. Where can people get in contact with you? Are you on social media, or are you on Facebook or anything like that?
I'm on Facebook, really. Stuart Allen on Facebook. If you want to contact me, just inbox me.
Yeah. So if people want to have a chat with you at any time about anything that we've talked about, and obviously if people have any information they want to pass on to you, or
definitely.
any theories or anything like that, have you thought about writing a book, Stu? Because I think you've got so much stuff there. It seems a shame, you know.
I have. I've thought about it. Don't get me wrong. I have thought about putting my thoughts down and theories together. It's certainly something. I suppose I'm still an open book myself, because I would like to listen to hear other people's ideas from what I've been talking about tonight. Because I'm not saying, I would never say that I'm right on anything that I've talked about, but I've just feel that there is some truth behind in what I'm thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. There's some very good theories, and very interesting theories.
Thank you for that. It's been great. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, no. It's been absolutely great having you on, Stuart, and I'd love to chat more with you about it.
Yeah, anytime you want. If people are interested, if people listen to your podcast are interested and want me back on, then just get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, it's been great. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you, Craig.
It's been brilliant. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye. You can visit my website at www.craigbryant.co.uk. Paranormal Pendle will return, and remember to keep watching the shadows.